Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Good evening. Welcome to Apex Racing TV for round 11 of the Weekend Warriors Formula Ford. We've got two races for you tonight to view. First one here being the Formula Ford at Detroit Belle Isle. A very tricky track for the drivers to circumnavigate for the 40-minute race that we've got ahead of us tonight. My name's Andy Thompson. I've got Ron Munz with me, and in production we got Samuli. Ron, welcome to the booth, mate, and your first one is going to be an interesting one, being around Detroit Grand Prix circuit.
Oh yeah, it's definitely going to be a very interesting race tonight. Belle Isle, one of the most storied street circuits in all of America. It's one of the oldest, I believe. Unfortunately, it's not in use anymore, as the IndyCar Series and the IMSA races that once occupied this circuit have now moved to the downtown, but it's still here on iRacing, and I think it'll put on a very intriguing race tonight. Some very tight and twisty sections, but you do have that very long straightaway coming out of the 1-2 section that I think will provide a lot of overtaking opportunities for these drivers tonight.
Yeah, definitely will be, but it will be certainly tricky for the drivers. These cars tend to slide out around corners, and really gotta be precise with your turn-ins around this track, because the walls will not be forgiving in these cars. But that's all for us to look forward to. The cars are currently in qualifying. Open qualifying sessions at the moment, but let's have a quick look at the championship standing. In S1, Megan Overstreet on 856 points, with JC Green 765, so a sizable lead that Megan has going into the penultimate round here at Belle Isle. Kane Lashley in third on 619, with Yao Tabino on fourth on 383. Jeff Jacobson in fifth on 363, with Jesus Rodriguez in sixth on 324. Simon Mayer in seventh on 126, with Joshua Soto in eighth on 129, and rounding out the top nine is Giancarlo Scula on 105 points. Over to S2 then. Tom Laurie leads away on 568 points, with Philip Fernandez in second on 507. Michael E is in third on 463, with Joshua Flores in fourth on 289. Sander Verbrugge is in fifth on 229, and Chris Montgomery is in sixth on 192. Trent Kramer in seventh on 185, with Benjamin Harris in eighth on 180. Richard Coffey in ninth place on 139, with Tim Sertano rounding out your top 10 on 120 points. heading over to the Masters. Antonio Reis on a commanding 643 points, with Jim Brewster in second place on 619. Jorge Marni in third on 616 points, with Alain Degas in fourth on 541. Stevie Ray in fifth on 508, with Gary Walbolt in sixth place on 430. Andrew Love in seventh on 403, with Chris Murakami in eighth on 346. Franz Reck in ninth on 286, and running out your top 10 is Michael G on 128. So a lot of the championships are pretty much sewn up at the moment, and Megan Overstreet certainly has been the bridesmaid, not the bride, but in the way of the championship, certainly leading the way, has been on the podium consistently throughout the season. We saw an epic race with Turbino last time out in Alton Park, where Megan literally got overtaken on the last corner of that race to come second again, but she's constantly up there in there. Antonio Reis in the Masters is been a commanding driver throughout the season, always at the top end of the field. Had a little bit of a blip at Alton Park last time out, but still have a commanding lead there. And in the S2, it's a little bit closer at the top, more for the battle for the mid pack in the S2 range, but it's going to be an epic battle here. We can see in the timing tower at the moment we've got 5 minutes left to qualify, and Hendrickson in first place, very much a new driver to the S1, and already showing his credentials there, leading the way. Literally a second behind him it is Jason Green. I mean, that is an absolute monster of the difference time in there between Hendrickson and Green overall. Marnie heading up for Masters in third place. McCullough is your top S2 driver, 1.1 seconds behind Hendrickson. But wow, what a flying lap there from Hendrickson, Ron.
Oh yeah, that is just a ridiculous gap. Nearly over a second gap to any competitor, regardless of where you are. Is just, that's ridiculous. That's like Max Verstappen levels of dominance. That is unheard of. So fantastic lap there from Hendrickson, and I believe that will probably go unchallenged for the rest of this session. Certainly a lot of these drivers pushing. We saw Manny have a big moment a couple corners ago, nearly hit the wall. Actually, I believe he did slightly nudge the wall. I believe he got away with that somewhat scot-free, but still, just, I don't think that time is going to get challenged from Hendrickson. That was a fantastic lap from him.
Yeah, definitely. Let's ride on board with Tim Hendrickson around the lap of this bent last second. You can just see the car just sliding out, going through turns 1 and 2 there with the straight that you were on about, Ron. That's probably going to be the best opportunity for the drivers to overtake between 2 and 3, but it's literally a right-hander 90-degree turn. You can sort of see a little bit of a blip on the brake before just swinging it in, coming around into turn 4. Very tight, twisty circuit, so it's going to be extremely hard for the drivers to make a passing opportunity tell here. Coming through here up to 5, down into 6, left-hander type before another sort of, you call it a straight, it's not really going to affect these cars. It's going to be flat out, coming all the way from 6th down into turn number 7, but another 90-degree right-hand corner coming out, with the drivers' markers have really got to be on it to be able to ensure they get through the corners. But you can sort of see how much these cars slide out. One of the big characteristics, you can see the car in front literally near enough losing the front end, coming through turn number 9 here, through to turn 10, and then just switching directions. You can just see how big these curbs are. So if any drivers sort of hit the curbs, then I think you'll probably find a lot will be going into the wall today. Coming up through here into turn number 12, through turn 12, a little bit into turn 13, and then a short little sprint up to the turn 14th and back onto the start-finish straight, and that is a lap around your Belle Isle circuit. It's going to be very tricky for the drivers, and like you said, Ron, I think the only opportunities is 2nd to 3rd, and I think qualifying is going to be super important because there's not going to be that many opportunities to be able to make a clean pass around the circuit.
I think you're exactly right. You brought up some very good points going through that lap there with Hendrickson. That was fantastic to see him huck that car around. This track is definitely a very challenging one. Was very challenging when it was used in real life, and of course here in the sim it is equally challenging in these cars that are definitely more driver dependent. You know, it's a car that you got to wheel around. These drivers aren't having an easy time driving these Formula Fords around this track. You can see him sawing at the steering wheel, and you see a mistake there from, I'm not sure who that was, making a mistake there through turn 3. That's Brewster there having a spin in turn 10. I'm not sure what happened there. Might have hit the inside curb, which you brought up during that small little track tour you gave there. That is going to be important to see how those drivers kind of use those curbs or just kind of avoid them altogether. Because, as you said, that curb is giant compared to the small little itty-bitty baby tires on these Formula Fords. So you can see, just looking at the onboard, like the curb height is about nearly half as tall as the tire itself. So it'll be interesting to see the lengths these drivers go to avoid the curbs here.
Yeah, definitely is. Coming into the last 25 seconds of the qualifying session, Hendrickson still leads the way. The gap has come below a second, but it's still near 7/10 of a second to Jason Green in second place. I mean, he's really got this track dialed in, has Tim Hendrickson here. Probably one of his favourite tracks. Probably not a lot of the other drivers have gone through doing a lot of, you can just see him hitting the walls on the exit. I mean, you just got to watch out for the suspension damage. But looking further down to that, you can sort of see the timings are more closely to what we used to, tenths of a second, rather than a massive 7/10 Hendrickson has over Green. So I'd expect to see Hendrickson sort of go off into the distance very early on into this race. But looking further down the field, our top Masters is Marnie in fourth. McConnell, an excellent third place for him to stick the S2 driver into third place. He's going to have a good 3 cars between himself and Fernandez in 7th place. But it's going to be a good race for McConnell. He just needs to get around that first lap because these cars are absolutely treacherous on that first lap. The tyres are going to be cold. They're trying to spin the car around these very tight, twisty circuit track, and I'm expecting to see maybe a few incidents on that opening lap, which could put paid to a lot of people's aspirations here today.
And that won't be the most shocking development in the world with the way these Formula Fords are very easy to make wheel-to-wheel contact with how far the tires stick out from the rest of the chassis. So these cars are surprisingly wide. They're still pretty tiny compared to most of the cars that race here in real life. But still, I think it'll be a challenge for these drivers to get through lap 1 cleanly. Certainly not discrediting the talent of the other drivers in this series. But at a track like this, which is fairly narrow, very bumpy, and a car like this, which is very easy to make wheel-to-wheel contact, and as you mentioned, it's going to be very treacherous grip-wise for those drivers. I think we'll see a bit of chaos towards the early stages of this race.
Yeah, it definitely is. We've only got 4 drivers in the S1 category as we watch Gary Warbolt literally hit the wall. I'm expecting to see quite a few of them incidents here tonight, but only 4 drivers in the S1 category, so there's still some really good points on for the 4 drivers to get in that section. In S2, you can see there we've got a sizable number, around about, I think it's around about 15 of the S2 drivers with around about 7 Masters drivers. So S2 is probably going to be the hotly contested class here tonight. But looking at Megan Overstreet trying to get up into her position. Unusual for her to be back in 6th place at the moment, so trying to do her best. Super close to Lasky in front of her, only 0.03 of a second difference between the two, but no improvement there, and Hendrickson does manage to leave it on pole, which I suppose being a second ahead of the grid is probably to be expected. But let's go through the grid here tonight for this race. Tim Hendrickson commanding 135.916 with Jason Green in 2nd, Michael McConnell in 3rd with Jorge Moni, the top Masters driver in 4th, Kane Lasky in 5th, Megan Overstreet in 6th, Philip Fernandez in 7th with Benjamin Harris in 8th, Wayne Palmer in 9th with Richard Coffrey in 10th with Jim Brister in 11th. In 12th we've got Paul Stevens. In 13th we've got Andrew Love with 14th, Chris Walker. 15th is Stevie Ray. 16th is Tom Laurie with 17th, Kian Palmer. In 18th we've got Paul Godden. In 19th, Gary Warbob with 20, Adam Bradshaw, and Yuaxi Lin in 21st. I'm not sure if he will be joining the grid, but certainly didn't set a time in qualifying. It's going to be an interesting race, Ron, and it's going to be all about that first lap, you know, because the problem you've got, if you're the mid-pack or towards the tail end of this field, somebody in front of you has an incident, there's not many places to go, and a lot of these corners are actually blind when you go around them, so it's going to be really tricky if there's an incident in front, which could cascade the incidences further down the field, couldn't it?
Yeah, that is a very fair point you raised there. This track, there's very little room to run, pretty much no room to hide if you have some kind of incident all throughout this track. Very tight sections there, which will definitely create a lot of chaos if we have a small little mistake from just one driver coming through the very tight, you could call it a stadium section, coming through turn 7, and that very tight section of this circuit. I think we'll see a lot of carnage, but one driver that I'm going to keep my eye on is Megan Overstreet. You mentioned earlier how she hasn't really set the world on fire in this series, but she's just kept her car clean, and at a race like this, which we expect to be very chaotic, I think if she can just keep her car on the road and keep her car clean, I think she might have a shot to win it tonight.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, she's super consistent, always been in the podium positions throughout the season. It's just that first place one that's sort of eluded her more often than not. But it's going to be interesting to watch Megan's driving style, because she tends to slide the back end out of the car anyway. So it's going to be really interesting to see how she tackles this race. But looking here with Hendrickson just coming around the start finish, and the race is underway. You can sort of see 3, 4 wide going into the first and second corner, and luckily the first and second corner are quite open for the cars to be able to just get them up to speed. But Hendrickson managing to keep the positions. The top 6 remain in the same positions they started. Rich Coffrey up 3 places from where he started, so a great start for Richard Coffrey there in 7th place. He manages to get another one up into 6th, up 4 places from where he started. Kane Lasky has managed to overtake He's going the wrong way at the moment. Rich Coffrey's on fire, up 5 places from where he started in 5th place.
Some argy-bargy action farther towards the back involved Stevie Ray there. He was involved in that small old melee as they went through turn 3. Surprisingly clean so far. I saw a little bit of tail-happy action as they came out of turn 2, going over that bridge. You can sort of expect that with the rear end of these cars getting light, but so far, so clean. Couple of scrapes here and there, a couple of wall taps throughout the field, but I think right now we haven't had any major dilemmas so far.
That's how we've just commentated Kiss of Death there, coming into the infield section of turn 8, 9 and 10, as we see Wayne Palmer just getting it slightly wrong there, hitting the front of his car. You can sort of leave in his nose on that corner. His front right tyre is completely shot, literally off to the left, so he will be making a trip back to the pits here to get his fast repair to get back out on track, but so easily done around this track, isn't it?
And that's a very tricky corner there. The corner at the end of the very long back straightaway. We have a big kerfuffle here towards the end of the lap. That is between turns 12 and 13 there. That's a very tight section. A lot of incidents happen there in real life. An incident has befallen the drivers here. We're following Chris Walker here. He was running towards the back of the field. Let's see what happens here. Just as a bit of tail-happy action there coming through turn 12, and it's going to cost him dearly, and he reverses back into the path of another car who gets collected. I believe he's going to be the one that's feeling the most burn from that accident, but certainly the other drivers that were involved might have picked up some kind of damage. I believe this was the other driver involved, Benjamin Harris. He might have picked up damage in that incident, so tough for some of these drivers to get involved in incidents very early on this 40-minute race.
Yeah, but I suppose in the grand scheme of it, 3 drivers in this field on a very tricky track is probably not a bad fallout, to be honest. That's Laurie, Palmer and Walker there, all gone into the pits into the first lap. We're looking at Megan Overstreet not making any inroads at the moment, still in 6th place, in 4th place overall in that S1 category. So like we said, qualifying was super important. As we see there, big hit, car in front loses it. And unfortunately, as I was saying before, Megan Overstreet, you can see in the background, they're still spinning around there. That's Stevie Ray as well, and the cars.
Ooh, this is chaos.
Absolute chaos coming on through turn number 7. It's like you said, that turn 7 is super tricky, you know, with the sides of the curbs in there. If you hit the curb on the inside, which is what I think happened there, it just caused that cascading effect down the field, and we're still seeing the cars just trying to get there. That's Megan Overstreet who came off where you can see the rear right tyre literally off the floor. I think she might have to go back to the pits or tow to the pits, but no, still trying to keep on to try and save that time. But that was all caused by one of the cars in front just slightly losing it around the corner, and it just caused that cascading effect. Roger O'Mahony, you can see sort of loses it, hits the curb in on the outside and just catapults. Unfortunately, there was nothing that Jorge could have done there, and it caused just absolute chaos down the whole field.
Yeah, that's a very easy corner to make a mistake on. You go from the very wide pseudo back straightaway because you got some turns in it, but still, you go from that very wide section that's probably about 5 car widths wide. As we see Megan Overstreet spin off the curb there a few moments after the incident she was involved in coming through turn 7. But that you bottleneck from about 5 car widths wide to about maybe 2. So that's a very tricky corner to get right, and it's also kind of plays a little bit of mind games with you. You feel like, okay, yeah, I can take this corner, I can go a lot deeper into this corner, and then you go into it. And as we saw there for Manny, you had that very easy mistake to make in these cars, which are very difficult to drive around a circuit like this. But even just if you're driving like a Formula One car around here, that would be a very easy mistake to make, because I certainly myself have outbraked myself going into turn 7 at this track quite a few times. So that's a very easy corner to make a mistake on, as we've seen in the early stage of this race. It's catching out a lot of drivers.
Yeah, it definitely is. And you see from the track map in the top right-hand corner how disfragmented the field has become already, even after only 5 minutes and 4 laps of this race. We've got the front around about 4 cars just coming around turns 1 and 2 here, and then there's a big gap back to 5th place that's all the way down to 12th. And then you've got 14th, you can see they're coming into turn number 7. So the field has already been fragmented with the incidents that we've had on the opening couple of laps here today. And this may become more of an issue when the front runners like Hendricks and Green and Lasky start coming around to try and with nearly a second lead in that qualifying session. The battle there really is for the 2nd and 3rd place between Green and Lasky. About 3 tenths of a second is covering them 2 drivers, and behind them we've got McConnell, who's the top driver in the S2 at the moment in 4th place. So them 3 having a 3-way battle for that 2nd place, but sort of Hendrickson, even this early stages, has almost clocked out 4.7 seconds, and that gap is just growing. But one thing we have got to take into consideration is the pit stops, the mandatory pit stops that the drivers have to do. That always throw in a little bit of spice into the race as well. So it's going to be interesting to see when some of the drivers start coming in for their mandatory pit stop.
Yeah, that's going to be a very important thing to look at in this race tonight. One thing that I don't think we'll see a lot of is a whole lot of fuel strategy at a track like this, where it's not like a track like Road America per se, where the drivers just sit in the slipstream and that can play dividends for your races. We're seeing drivers coming into the pits already. That's Philip Fernandez coming into the pits from the 7th position, so might be an early strategy call here to pit 7 minutes into this race. So we'll just have to wait and see how that works out for him. But I think these drivers, I don't think there's going to be any like conserving tires or conserving fuel or anything like that. I think these drivers are just going to have to go for it. Even though at a track like this, it's very easy to make a mistake at, I think these drivers just have to push it and give it 100%. Because even though the leader right now, Hendrickson, is pulled out now a 5.3 second gap to Green behind, the rest of this field is still very tight, all things considered. Even though it is a bit fragmented, there is still a lot of battling up and down this field.
Definitely is. I'm currently watching Gary Warburg trying to chase down Paul Godden for that P7 overall. Just looking at the drivers that have come into the pits, 9 out of the 20 drivers have already been into pit lane to either get a repair or do an extremely early pit stop, which sometimes comes out, as we can see Kieran Palmer here, just losing it slightly there and towing it back to the pit. So an extremely difficult track for the drivers to try and master with the sort of characteristics of these cars. They tend to slide out. They are very slidey when you're going through the corners. You can see different types of driving style with people tending to want to slide that car a lot more into corners. Megan Overstreet comes to mind. Antonio Reese is another one that basically he's a very good and methodical driver. He doesn't like the car to get twitchy at all. So it's very much 2 different driving styles in these Formula 4s, and I'm expecting Antonio Reese, who's unfortunately not here tonight, sort of driving style of being precise around the corners, not letting the back end sort of slide out around the corners, is the way to go here today. I mean, having 9 of the 20 drivers already gone through the pit lane, it just shows what more of attrition this track is with this combination of cars.
And the big thing as well with the driving strategy of trying to keep the back end of the car fairly straight compared to the front is at a track like this, and pretty much no runoff area to speak of. The only area where you have a runoff area on the outside of the curb is right here coming through turn 3. We're seeing a battle here towards the farther back of the field. This is between Gooden and Wilberbolt that we were following earlier. And just that's the small little section of this entire racetrack where you have just a little bit of runoff. Besides that, the rest of the track, if you get it a little bit loose and just a little bit off the racing line for the rear end, you're going to clip a concrete barrier and you could very easily bend something in the rear suspension. So that's going to be something interesting to follow throughout the rest of this race, how those drivers try and just keep their car and keep it clean, because as you mentioned, you can see it on the left-hand side of your screen. You can see the amount of drivers that have run into issues. A lot of drivers have had to tow back to the pits. A lot of drivers involved in incidents so far in this race. And I think just keeping it clean is going to be the name of the game. As the old saying goes, to finish first you have to finish. I think that rings true tonight.
100%. You know, these street circuits are very much Marmite tracks, aren't they? You either love them or hate them. But from a spectator point of view, they're great tracks to watch because the drivers have nowhere to go if they make a mistake. There's literally concrete barriers on the inside and the outside, so it's going to be super interesting. Like you mentioned, Ron, it's not only battling the rest of the drivers in there, it's battling yourself to make sure that you're clean, consistently going through these corners. As we're continuing to watch this battle here at 4-7 between Paul Goddard and Gary Warbolt. Two different classes, but certainly very much mixing it up out on track. You can sort of see in the timing tower on the left-hand side, I mean, how much fragmentation the field has been. You've got the top driver there, and then you've got 6.9, then you've got about half a second between third and fourth. Then 17 seconds back, you're looking at Stevens in 5th place. And then it's just the next nearest battle is the battle we're currently watching with Goddard and Warbolt. Everybody else is sort of at least 2 or 3 seconds behind the driver that's chasing them. So, you know, it's no close battles at the moment, apart from that 2nd place and for 7th place that we were currently watching. So you can see there Harris just getting past Warbolt, who's starting to come into the race. You can have that freeway battle between Goddard and Harris and Warbolt for that 7th place overall. But some great racing on screen for us to show. I mean, we're currently 11 minutes into a 40 minutes, and there's just so much that's happened over that. Half the field, like you said, has already been in the pits there, and I think that is Kian Palmer. Yes, it is Kian Palmer just getting out of the way. He's not having the best day at the races here, is Kian.
Yeah, a lot of drivers having pretty bad races so far. Some drivers just keeping it clean, and the other drivers that have kept it clean have cut through the field like a hot knife through butter right now. So the drivers that were involved in some kind of incident early on, they're definitely going to be feeling the pain in the early stages of this race. But right now, there's 2 drivers looking over the live timing screen that have put together some very good races. One of them is Paul Gooden. We're seeing a spin there coming through the very treacherous turn 7. That's Bradshaw, who has a small little spin there. Nothing too serious. I believe he kept it out of the wall for the most part, so he will be scot-free from that. But right now we're seeing a battle here towards the end of the top 10 that involves the driver that has really impressed me in the early stage of this race, and that's Gary Walbart, who has actually moved up 10 positions at this point in the race, so he has put together a fantastic drive. But the man who's made it up the most positions is Gooden, currently in 7th. He's managed to make up 11 spots, so a lot of drivers coming through the field early on, but a lot of drivers, including Megan Overstreet, who I feel like I kind of jinxed. I said, yeah, I want to keep an eye on them, and about a few minutes later, then she gets involved in an incident, which was really unfortunate. It's dropped her down the field, so I feel bad. I might have pulled off a commentator's jinx there on her in my first race here in the Formula Ford series here for Weekend Warriors. So I might have some angry drivers messaging me saying, just don't talk about me during the broadcast, man. I don't want you to jinx me. So a lot of drivers having some good races and a lot of drivers having really bad races right now.
Yeah, I mean, it just shows how quickly your race can change here. Richard Coffrey, he had an absolute lightning start, up 5 places from where he started, and then all of a sudden has gone back down to P13. So I think he was one of the drivers that was caught up in that Marnie incident coming through turn number 7. So unfortunately one of the drivers that did come off worse, and coming down 3 places in P13. 4th in the S2 class at the moment is Richard, but certainly shows that he has got the pace and the pace and is trying to track down Wayne Palmer in front of him. It looks like we have got a few brand new drivers to the series. Paul Stevens, Paul Goddard, Gordon, the one you mentioned there, Tim Hendrickson, who's currently leading this race, Wayne Palmer and Kieran Palmer with Chris Walker, all new. It looks like they're new to the series, so big welcome to them guys as well. And pretty much a hard track to have your first cut in one of these Formula Fords.
That's definitely the case. At a track like this, very narrow, very little room to run, very little room to hide if you make some kind of mistake. To be a rookie in this series at a track like this is very, very difficult. I think they should have probably waited in 1 week's time to make their debut at Spa, the season finale here for the Weekend Warriors Formula Ford Series. I think that might have been the smarter decision, but hey, I can respect them deciding, you know what, I'm going to risk it. I'm going to go out here at this very difficult circuit here right in the small little area between Michigan, between Detroit and Canada. These drivers are making their debuts, so I can definitely respect them deciding, you know what, I'm not going to wait for an easy ride. I'm going to really stick my head out here. It's kind of like sticking your toes in a pond full of piranhas, making your debut at a track like this. So those drivers have definitely impressed me, and the one that has impressed me the most is Hendrickson, who, making his debut at a very difficult track, he has put together a masterful drive so far and is nearly 10 seconds clear of green, and we're only 15 and a half minutes into this race.
Really stamping his authority on this track. I mean, it was ominous from the qualifying anyways. Normally tenths of a second we're talking about the difference between the drivers, but when we get a driver that's near enough a second ahead of the rest of the field, you know he's going to be on point during the race, because it's sort of like two races in it, the qualifying and then the race, is whether you can keep the pace up. But being a second ahead, I mean, I'm just looking at his lap time, his fastest lap time is the last lap. He did a 1:36.61. The rest of the field, the top of the rest of the field, are 1:37.02s. So, you know, around about 4 tenths, near enough 4 tenths up to half of a second faster than the rest of the drivers. And then you look further down from P5 down, it's 1:39s, 1:38. So you can sort of see the speed that Hendrickson is going, you know, doing the 1:36. The only driver to be in the 1:36 in the field, the nearest driver for the best lap is a 1:37.02. So around about nearly 4 tenths of a second slower than the rest of the field. So you can sort of see the speed that Hendrickson is putting in. But saying that, Green is managing to try to get away from Lasky there in third place. He's got 1.3 seconds gap now between himself. The Lasky has got a bit of competition behind from the S2 driver of Michael McConnell, who's having an excellent drive, really good qualifying out on track. But we're currently watching Mane and Fernandez. Mane just trying to go up the inside there, getting the position done over Fernandez. They are two different classes, Masters and the S2. But Mane, after that earlier incident, trying to make back up, and currently finds himself back into 9th place, trying to chase down Warbolt. We can see there 15 seconds is the deficit. Warbolt hadn't gone into the pits, but Mane had to go into the pits to do his fast repair. So certainly is showing the pace. Has got the time to claw it back. Only 17.5 minutes into this 40-minute race. So we do know that Jorg Mane is an extremely quick driver, but 15 seconds is a tall order to try and overtake. Currently Gary Warbolt there in P2 in the Masters, 3.9 seconds behind Harris as well. So he's doing well there in P2. But Brewster, who was second in the Masters Championship over Antonio Reese, I think it's going to be a tall order for Brewster to do any inroads into the Masters Championship, but certainly having a good effort here and could win that #1 spot overall. But just looking further down the field, Megan Overstreet there after that earlier spin, a couple of spins around the lap in that Jorg Mane incident there, finds herself in P13th. Very unusual place for her to be at the moment, but I suppose that's the joystick. You can sort of see the back end of that car. I don't know if there's still something wrong with it. You can see it sort of bouncing off the track. So I'm not sure if there's been another incident where obviously she would have used a fast repair to repair her car before. I don't know if she's hit the wall and has an incident, or if it's just an iRacingism.
I think one driver that just used a fast repair was Paul Gooden. We saw him battling in the top 10 a few laps ago, but he towed back to the pits, and he's now coming out of the pits. He was there for a while. He's now dropped down to P17. So he is last of the runners that are really still in contention. The rest of the drivers behind him either didn't take the start entirely, with the case of Lynn, who's currently in last and 20th, who did not take the start, did not say a qualifying time. Not sure what happened with him there. But Paul Gooden, who we saw running 7th pretty much, he's dropped down 10 positions right now. The last of the cars really still in contention in this race. But still, he's just hopelessly out of contention. Not sure what happened there. Might have had some kind of incident at some point in this circuit, which, it being the way this track is, it's not the most shocking development in the world if he had some kind of mistake. Now he's battling with Palmer, but right now we're seeing a battle here between Lasky and McConnell there. Seeing these two drivers be very close as they go through the first 2 corners of this circuit. We might see a move here from Kane Lasky going down into the braking zone of turn 3, but I believe he is just too far away. He is closing a little bit there on McConnell. He is within striking distance, but right now he is going to tuck in behind McConnell's car, wait a little bit, wait for the opportune time for Lasky to get into the final overall podium position and overtake the McConnell driver there for to be with his fellow drivers in his category. You can see Hendrickson and Green there with the other red ticker next to them. So Lasky wants to be with his competitors. He won't be with them on track. Certainly Hendrickson is driven away, and Green as well is fairly ahead of these two drivers. But I'm sure Lasky wants to get ahead of McConnell. He might be a little bit tired of seeing that number 626 car up ahead of him. So I think Lasky will try and wait it out a little bit. We're over halfway into this race now, but I'm sure Lasky definitely wants to get past McConnell before this race is done with.
Yeah, definitely is. McConnell started in P3, so has got back into a position where he started this race. The S2 driver there looking for a podium position at the end of the race overall. So having a great race is the S2 and having a little bit of a battle here with Kane Lasky overall. But just looking down the field, the big moves and shakers, the big mover at the moment is Gary Warbot, up 11 positions from where he started into P3 in the Masters. So he's having a great day at the races. Paul Stevens, who's the car behind the battle, currently watching on screen, up 7 positions from where he started. And then you've got the big losers, Megan Overstreet down 7 positions, Andrew Love, who's out this race, down 7 positions. So it's been at 50-50, the field splits of gainers and losers here in Belle Isle, but super tricky track at the moment. McConnell at the moment just managing to hold off Lasky, but Green is just sort of checked out from this battle that we're currently watching for the last P3. You can just see him there going around the corner, so has a couple of seconds gap. But I mean, Hendrickson at the front, 13.7 seconds every single lap. He's just gaining at least half a second, if not more, over the rest of the field. I mean, he's just driving this car like it's a class above what it currently is.
Yeah, he's just watching him drive that car around in qualifying at this very tricky street circuit. It was like watching a pianist perform a nice Beethoven number. So it's just seeing these drivers push their car as well as they have, and just it's not like he's overly pushing it or anything like that. He's just able to dance that car around this Belle Isle circuit like it's no tomorrow. So Hendrickson has put together a fantastic drive right now. He is really in his own postcode right now. The 3 drivers behind him are at least 14 seconds behind him. So he has a clear track ahead of him. Really no issues that he's run into so far this race compared to the rest of the field that have had some kind of issue. I think at this point, probably about half the field has had some kind of contact with the wall or another competitor. So just a lot of chaos all throughout this field, but this man Hendrickson has avoided it for the most part.
Yeah, it definitely is, and he's not holding up either. You know, having seen a gap of like 14.5 seconds, he's just put in the fastest lap on his previous lap of 1:36.31. So he's constantly pushing the times throughout this race, not laying back on his laurels. He wants to get that gap as big as he can. And you sort of see the gaps as the top 4 probably within like 17 seconds, but then you look from 5th down, it's 42 seconds before you go to P8, which is over a minute down from the leader. I mean, that's just unheard of in this Formula 4, but I suppose saying that this track is extremely tricky, and quite a few of the drivers have been involved in an incident. But Jason Green here in second place, pretty much probably finding it a bit of a boring race, to be honest. You know, he's just got no chance of catching Hendrickson in front, and is extending his lead to the third place McConnell, who's having a battle with Lasky at the moment. So those two fighting over each other, which is sort of letting him get away from that battle for third place. So pretty much a boring race there, it looks like, for Jason Green, tucked up in second place on track. But the biggest battle is the one that you can see just in the background there between McConnell and Lasky, literally glued together on track for the final position, or the podium position here today. And it's the S2 driver into this 40-minute race, and we do have the round of pit stops still ahead of us as well that can always change up the sequence in the towers. We've seen quite a few the sequence in the towers. We've seen quite a few of the drivers risking it all, really, and trying to put in the minimum amount of fuel that hasn't paid off, and sometimes it has. So it's going to be interesting to see.
There, who we saw pull off there. Not sure what happened there between him and Coffee. That was who we saw pull off there. Not sure what happened there between him and Coffee. That was very close between those drivers. That was very close to contact between those two drivers as well. So it's close calls here, but yeah, so a round of pit stops near. I think the field order all throughout this field will definitely shuffle with it.
Yeah, it definitely is. And certainly with the gaps you can see in the timing towers, it sort of makes sense to maybe say, right, let me have a look at see which tires are worn and change them. Because like you said, one little mistake, after the cacophony of mistakes that we've seen here tonight, the drivers hitting the wall, unfortunate spins that have caused chaos throughout the field, you know, it's them little spins that will also put excessive wear on the tyres. So if you've got the time to be able to do it, and to be able to, like you said, first of all, you've got to finish the race to get the points. You know, it probably makes sense to change the tyres if you're in the mid-pack of this race, because you know, there's like 4 seconds, 11 seconds, 10 seconds, and then you've got the plus lap from Rich Coffey down in P11. So, you know, it probably makes sense, economical sense, to change a couple of the tyres, because, you know, we heard from Megan Overstreet last time out about Brands that the tyres were pretty much shot in 40 minutes. Now, Brands is not as harsh on the tyres as this place is, so I can imagine that if the drivers are not taking tyres just to try and get some time back, we could see a few more incidents in the closing stages of this race.
That could be one thing that Hendrickson might have an advantage of, considering the massive gap he's pulled now, over 17 seconds clear of Green. I think he might try and pit for tires just to have that comfort, because even though he is pretty much in command of this race, I'm sure he'll want to have some fresh tires on his car, because in a car that has very little grip to begin with, no aerodynamics to speak of, it's basically a flying wedge for the most part, this car is. So I think I think Hendrickson would probably take tires, even though that might eat a little bit of his gap. I think he has a big enough gap where I think he can grab the tires and just leave with still very comfortable lead, and he won't have to worry about just being on, basically driving on hockey pucks towards the end of this race, because as you mentioned, these cars at a track like this, I mean, Brands Hatch, he said that Megan Overstreet was mentioning how bad the tires were, how bad of a shape the tires were towards the end of that race. At a track like this, which has a lot more bumps, has a lot more of a porous surface to it, these tires are probably screaming in pain even after the very short run that they've been on. I say very short, we're 28 minutes into this race, but still, I think these tires are going to be absolutely screaming in pain, even at this little north of the 3/4 mark, well, a little south of the 3/4 mark, my apologies. I think the drivers, a smart call would be to pit for tires, but as a former driver myself, I can confirm that drivers don't have the largest brains in the world, so I think some of these drivers will just see that a track position and not pit for tires, but the man who's been dominant, been in control of this race from start to finish, is now in his box.
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah, I'll be surprised if Hendrickson does actually change some tyres. You know, he is super confident around this track, and you know, seems to be the man on a mission throughout the whole of this race, had a sizable lead. You can see the Hendrickson now. Lasky's managed to go free for another lap. We've got Green and McConnell in the pit lane as well, and true to form, Tim Hendrickson looks like he hasn't changed any tyres. So we'll go the final 11 minutes of this race on the worn tyres beforehand. So I don't think he's going to be really the one that I'll probably be looking at. It's more the midfield battlers, that the ones that I think will be the ones that maybe get the mistakes made. But let's have a look at replay here of Jason Green. Comes into the pit lane. Oh, he misses his box and has to reverse back. Look, we had a little bit of an advantage here, but that's all and not as bad as the one I did at Daytona. I'll hold my hands up. I literally came into the Daytona to do my pit stop, completely missed my box, which was the first box when you come into the pit lane. Got to the end of the pit lane and I realised, where's my box? So I literally went the full length of the pit lane and didn't realise that I had overshot. So I'm a fine one to talk about overshooting pit boxes, but as we watch Jason Green at the moment there in third place. We've still got Lasky, who has not pitted yet, but I'll imagine he will be in this lap to see if that overstreet has gone down the start finish. So no, he has managed to eke out another lap here, which could be an advantageous position to himself and McConnell, who was having that epic battle for the final podium position on the field. As we watch Philip Fernandez, looks like he's been involved in this. You can see the front right-hand tyre literally off the floor, so he is just trundling back to pit lane to get that fast repair to get himself back out, but will be losing a few positions. Obviously, currently you see him there in P8 with Brewster just behind him. There you go, Brewster just flying on by, and Rich Coffrey in 10th will be the next driver to make past Fernandez there. So bit of a cropper there. Looks like he's made contact with a barrier wall there. Oh, as we see Richard Coffrey just talking about him having a little bit of a spin and just trying to get on in turn 7.
And just, again, turn 7, it's been the trouble spot all throughout tonight, but a small little trouble spot that we saw there for Fernandez, which unfortunately caught him out. He was putting together a pretty decent drive. I think that was coming through turn 5. I'll just take a quick look at my track map. Yes, that was turn 5 there that he made a small little mistake on, and you see his wounded car there about to enter the final few corners. He is going to have to come into the pits and take the fast repair. I believe he was one of the first drivers to come into the pit towards, I think, like the 7-minute mark or something like that. So Philip Fernandez was in it for the long haul, and unfortunately for him, he's going to lose another position there on pit road as Coffey cut ahead of him going into the pits. That was a very smart move there from Coffey to gain another position there right as he entered the box. But unfortunate for Fernandez, who was putting together a decent drive, he picks up that damage, manages to get his wounded Formula Ford car back into his pit box. But unfortunately for him, that's going to cost him dearly. That small little bit of time he had coming from turn 5 all the way to the pit entry, that's going to cost him dearly tonight.
Yeah, it definitely is. You can see here the battle between Green and McConnell. Green lost a lot of time in the pit stop. McConnell not far behind him, literally about 7/10 of a second. As Kane Lasky managed to get out in front, he has indeed. Lasky going from 4th place up to 2nd, and there's what just overshooting the pit stops a couple of laps just to be able to get a few less litres into the car has made a real big advantage. So Green, who was pulling away earlier on, we did see him in the pit lane overshoot his pit stall, which he had to reverse in. That would have lost his advantage out on track, but currently finds himself battling now for the 2nd place position, which pretty much was his, which was probably not bad for him. He had a pretty much a boring first half of the race, did Jason Green, but now he does have Lasky and McConnell there just behind him in 4th place to contend with. McConnell's still top of your S2 overall in the field, but I think he really wants that overall podium position.
There's Green going for a move around the outside of turn 7. That is very close there. That's actually a little bit of contact there from the looks of it. That might have been just very close there between Green and Lasky. Green manages to get the position there with a fantastic move going around the outside of turn 6. That was some brilliant stuff there. That's a corner that's caught out a lot of these drivers, but Green had the confidence in his race car to just send it around the outside of Lasky, and he grabs that P2 position. So fantastic race from Green. You said in said a couple of moments ago that Green, he had a very quiet and a very, frankly, boring opening part of this race. I was going to joke that he probably needs some energy drinks just to stay awake driving that Formula Ford around this track. But he had that little bit of a challenge there trying to get past Lasky, and he managed to rise to acclaim there and get that P2 spot there with a brilliant move there from Green on Lasky going around the outside of turn 7. That was some fantastic stuff there.
Was. Just looking at the pit stop strategies here, Kane Lasky 5 seconds quicker than Jason Green with a 41.78 was Green, 36.7 was Kane Lasky, and Michael McConnell was at 39.3. So around about 2 seconds. So that's why these cars are currently joined together on track. We saw an excellent move there from Green to take that second place overall. Currently only got 3.5 minutes left of this race, round about 2 or 3, probably this and 2 more laps to go. Tim Hendricks pretty much, he's had it all his own way. He's had a boring race. He's probably just fighting himself here with his fastest lap. His last lap was a 1:36.26, so only 1/100th of a second slower than his best lap. So having a bit of fun with himself, trying to beat his fastest lap time, but consistently in the 1:36 with the rest of the best of the rest doing low 1:37s. Currently running around in 1:38. So you can sort of see there the time of how Hendrickson has managed to get a 17.3 second lead over Green in second place. But Green certainly hasn't got it all his own way like he did in the first half of the race. Has Lasky and McConnell for a bit of company.
I think Green is not going to be resting easy in the final low moments of this race. I think Green, although he pulled off that fantastic move there, he's not pulling away from Lasky. Lasky is still keeping him honest at this stage of the race, and you also have McConnell right behind him. So we've got a 3-car pack here, and you also have the lapped car there, the number 13 there, I believe that is. Yeah, that's Gooden there, Paul Gooden, who had that incident that we didn't get a view of there. Speaking of incidents, we have an incident there with Kian Palmer coming through turn 6, and we've also have Andy Bradshaw involved, who's kind of stopped there. He didn't know what was happening there with Palmer's car. I believe maybe he picked up some damage. Right now he's reversing again, so not sure what happened there. That was just a simple little mistake there coming through the turn 7 section, which again, it's been the trouble spot all throughout this race, and it catches at yet another driver. What Apex Racing TV might have to do after this race, they might need to get a video together of all the mishaps that have happened in turn 7, because it's definitely been the trouble spot. Ooh, that was nearly a trouble spot moment there from Lasky, as he had the big sideways spike there going on the brakes going into turn 7. So that's a corner that's taken out a lot of drivers so far. Caught out Lasky there, and it also caught out Lasky when Green went around the outside of him a couple laps ago. I still can't get over that overtake. That was a fantastic move that he pulled off there, but Green is not going to have it very easy in the final stages of this race.
No, the 3 drivers, the best lap times was 1:37. All 3 of them in the previous lap time in the mid 1:36 now, 1:36.69, 1:36.62, and 1:36.59 respective from Jason, Kane, and Michael. So really pushing each other along in the closing stages of this race here. You would have thought it might have gone the other way with the tyre wear and the track temperature just slightly rising on track, but these 3 drivers are itching to get that podium position. Is currently held by Green and Lasky. McConnell not giving up the ghost there. You can just see him in the background there, just trying to eye up Kane Lasky. Kane Lasky just losing a little bit of time here to Jason Green in second place. Oh, as we see Benjamin Harris from, where was that from? That was from 7th place, having a slight incident. I think that's coming out through turn 11 that he sort of had that incident there, but finds himself currently still in P7th, but obviously would have made Mane have a little bit. You can sort of see the steering wheel there going slightly wrong as well, as so see your Mane there just gaining another position into P7, P2 in the Masters, but Harris there, yeah, hitting that wall. You can sort of see that onboard shot is steering
The
wheel
rear left.
45, yeah. Whoa. There we go, that was only a matter of time.
Yeah, that's, I think Harris should have pitted at the end of that lap. That rear left tire was pretty much pointing about 15 degrees out of whack there, so he had a very badly bent Formula Ford there, and after that contact coming through turn 2 there. He's going to be out of this race. Definitely not enough time to rejoin this race with very little time left to go. So unfortunately for him, he was putting together a very quiet race, had a few moments here and there. Unfortunately for him, you said it, coming through turn 11, made some kind of contact there. Maybe hit the inside curb and then bounced it off the outside wall. That could have been what happened there, but unfortunately for Harris, regardless of how it happened, it happened. Unfortunately for him, that's going to take him out of contention tonight.
Yeah, since the white flag has flown for Tim Hendrickson on what has been a faultless position, top in the qualifying, and has literally led from the off and just gained time every single lap. Currently nearly 20 seconds ahead of that second place battle that we were watching. We just see him there coming through turn number 7, so 3/4 of the last lap here done. But I mean, it's just been a masterclass for Tim Hendrickson here at Belle Isle. Hasn't put a wheel wrong all race, and has shown his dominance by constantly being in a 1:36. His last lap there, a 1:36.09, so his fastest lap. He is literally beating it on the penultimate lap here as he comes over the start finish, or nearly over the start finish line. Sorry, getting my head ahead of myself there. To take the win here, literally out on his own. Easy win for him, 20.6 seconds ahead of that battle for second and third. We can sort of see further back now, Lasky's had an incident and has put him out of contention. He's in 4th place, Green in 2nd place, 2 seconds behind McConnell. So Lasky's had some sort of incident in these closing stage of racing. Let's have a look and see what happened here. As you can sort of see Lasky in front with McConnell trying to make a move here, coming down into the second. Is this towards turn number 7?
Straight away.
Yeah.
He's
I mean,
coming into
sort of
turn 7.
loses it. Is he ever some sort of malfunction because drop or slow down? I'm not 100% sure, but he literally just came off the pace there, and you can see Michael McConnell getting his spot on the podium. The S2 driver coming home in 3rd place, Lasky coming home in 4th place, and that was a bit unusual, but still out on track. We've got Stevens, Brewster and Marnie. Brewster being your top driver in the Masters class, the 2nd place overall in the Masters class. Close up a little bit of on Antonio Reese, but nothing to trouble him there. But well, I mean, that was just an action-packed 40 minutes. Cars going off left, right and centre, self-imposed. Unfortunate incident at the start that put around about 6 drivers on a lap down straight away, and really put paid to Megan Overstreet getting her positions or a usual spot of 2nd place or 3rd place on the grid, finds herself in P13. But a cracking race, mate.
Yeah, that was hectic from start to finish. Right as I was saying that, we saw a car rub the barrier there, so a lot of drivers going off. I think what happened to Lasky there, I think he missed a shift going down the back straightaway, because even coming around to take the checkered flag, that car sounded very ill and was very slow. So I think that's might have been what happened. And fortunately for him, he rounds out, he ends up outside the podium overall.
Definitely, it still manages to get 3rd place overall in that S1 category. But here are your race results tonight for Belle Isle. Tim Hendrickson, a commanding win from Team Torpedo, very apt name there. 20 seconds ahead of Jason Green in 2nd place. In 3rd place is the S2 driver of Michael McConnell for a great podium position for him. Started 3rd, finished 3rd. Kane Lasky there obviously had some sort of slowdown, maybe missed a gear there that really put paid to that closing stages battle between himself and Michael McConnell there. Gets a 4th place. Paul Stevens in 5th. Jim Brewster top of the Masters in 6th place with Jorg Marnie. After that earlier spin, manages to get himself up into P7th overall. Gary Warbolt in P8th, our biggest mover in the field, up 11 positions from where he started. Wayne Palmer there in 3rd place in the S2 class. Richard Coffrey in 10th after a great start. Had a bit of an incident earlier on in the race, but managed to claw it back quite well to get up into 10th. Benjamin Harris in 11th. Paul Godden, after a very early and promising start, had a bit of an issue to find himself into P12. Megan Overstreet, unfortunately, one for her to forget there in P13 after that earlier incident with Jorg Marnie ultimately put paid to her race. Kieran Palmer, probably a race to forget, the new driver here in P14th, but still managed to get out on track, so fair play and kudos to him. Adam Bradshaw there in P15th, and then we got our non-stars, Philip Fernandez, 6 laps down, Tom Laurie, 8 laps, Stevie Ray, 11, Chris Walker, 21, Andrew Love, 23rd, 23 laps, obviously early out, and you actually, Lynn, didn't start the field. So some big winners and some big losers there in the race, Ron, but we've got a couple of drivers to look at. Let's have a look. Let's have a chat with Michael McConnell. Michael, welcome to the comms box, mate. 3rd place overall, top in the S2 class. How was that for you?
Hey, that was intense.
It's one way to put it, I suppose. I mean,
Yeah.
how did you find this track? I mean, it's a super tricky track. All the street circuits are. You've literally got no runoff, so you've really got to be precise. How did you approach this race? Because I mean, whatever you did seemed to work. You got yourself 3rd place in the qualifying, and obviously 3rd place overall. So, just tell us the secret to your success tonight.
Yeah, I was definitely hoping on qualifying in front of the mid pack, essentially, because I don't know what will happen to them, and I still don't know what happened to them because they dropped off pretty quickly. Yeah, and then that tended to work out. I did do several laps here this week, so I did do a good deal of practice, which I think paid off.
It definitely is. I mean, it's super competitive in that S2 field overall. I mean, we had quite a few drivers here tonight, as well as the championship. But it's always good to get yourself on the top spot in your class, as well as get an overall podium. So I'd imagine overall you're ecstatic with the result tonight.
Yeah, I wasn't actually expecting it to be competing for the podiums just yet, but here we are.
Definitely
Pretty
is,
happy with
but,
that.
One thing I would like to say is I absolutely love your picture that we put on the broadcast with your Stitch attire on in your pictures. So what's that all about?
Yeah, I'm just a bit of a dork for cartoons and Disney and stuff like that. So yeah, I just thought it would look kind of neat to represent that.
Definitely is, mate. But congratulations on the top spot in the S2 class and 3rd place overall. Obviously, we visit Spa for the final round of the season, and good luck there, mate. But congratulations for tonight.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
And Ron, did you want to have a quick chat with Jim Brewster?
Yeah, I was going to ask Jim just very quickly. We're running a little bit late here on this broadcast. Jim, thank you very much for joining us in the commentary booth. How was the race from your end?
Oh, incredible! I got lucky with some of that mess, and then I had Jorg had problems, and then I saw him come hunting down, and I was getting nervous, and I just tried plugging. I wasn't nowhere near his speed, but I just had a big enough lead, and we're still celebrating yesterday in the V race. My best buddy Andrew Love had an incredible win. He started back in 6th and chugged his way all the way up to the front and won. And Michael's been real fast on both cars this track. This track is unbelievably difficult. We're all just ready to be done with this and move on to the next track.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that, Sam. And one of the trickiest corners for all the drivers all up and down the field was turn 7 at the end of that. Not really a straightaway, but it's the back straight, flat-out blast going into turn 7. That was a very troubling corner for a lot of the drivers.
Because
can you talk through the drivers, the trickiness of that
It's
corner?
max braking, and then you have to come off and turn in at like 50 or 60%. So you have to, burn down the speed early and then get off to get the front end to glide nice through it. So yeah, there's no two ways about it. But to be honest, the corner coming onto that straight, which is so critical, is every bit as weird. It's totally off camber blind, and that sets up that whole straightaway. So there isn't an easy corner on the straight. Turn 1 and 2, those slippy, slidey things are totally difficult. So anyway, I hope it was a good show. Anyway, thanks so much for you guys do. My sister Tam down our team watches every week. She doesn't miss a single show. And thanks for all the work you guys do. We'll see you guys next week.
Thank you, Jim, very much for the shout out. You put together a pretty good race at this very difficult track. Thank you for joining us, Jim.
You bet.
There was Jim there, top of the Masters field. And we have our second place, Jason Green, overall in the S1. Jason, welcome to the booth, mate. Tim Hendrickson, he literally stole the show, so it's very much over second place overall. I mean, you had pretty much a boring, should I say, first half of the race, and then the pit stops again threw in its usual spanners, and you come out and had to do a rather ambitious and excellent move from Ron himself through turn number 7. Just talk us through the race from your point of view.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say any of it was boring from my perspective. That was a tough race. Just the nature of the track, and then trying to push flat out to break the draft on Kane and Michael.
Obviously, I wasn't going to mention your pit stop shenanigans, but obviously an easy mistake to make in the heat of the battle, but really made it entertaining towards the last quarter of the race that we still had. I mean, very tricky track to come to is Belle-Isle. I mean, just talk us through how hard it and how mentally hard it is to be able to control what is a car that loves to slide out into corners.
Yeah, actually, I mean, I think this car works really well for this track, surprisingly. I thought it would be a lot more scary than it was, but it was, yeah, it's extremely difficult. You have to commit to the corner, be on the throttle, and hope you got it right. Otherwise, you're gonna run, just that fraction too wide and end up in the wall. So yeah, it's you can't make really any mistakes. Otherwise, your race is over. So it's just kind of that pressure every single lap. You can't let your guard down.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, obviously coming towards the top end of the S1 class, and obviously I'm not sure if you know that Megan Overstreet got involved in an incident earlier on in the race and found herself down in P13. You're probably wishing that you had a few more S1 drivers in the field.
Well, I mean, I didn't actually realize Michael was S2, so that's the kind of the quality of the field we have. So it's yeah, it's the classes are there, but everybody's more or less on the same playing field. So I think we have a pretty strong field overall.
Yeah, it definitely is, mate. But another good result for you. Only one more round to go of the season. Find yourself in second place in the championship. I probably think you're going to end up being there towards the end. But it's been great to watch you out on the track and battling it hard with Megan. So congratulations, and look forward to the last round of the season.
Next week is going to be incredible. Yep.
Sure it will be. But we'll look forward to seeing you then, Jason.
Yep. Cheers, guys.
There was Jason Green, second in the S2 to a dominant drive of Tim Hendrickson. But that is the end of this broadcast. Obviously, stay tuned for part 2 of the Weekend Warriors. But from myself, Andy Thompson, and Ron Mons and Sammy Kumo in the production box, we bid you farewell and see you soon. Goodbye.